Good morning, Dean. How are you doing today?
Very good. Good morning.
Hey, I gotta preface this before we get started that I'm that kid that tipped over his dog's house, and I used it as a space module to make it to the moon as that little 6-year-old kid. So space is my life.
Oh my gosh, it's like straight out of Peanuts cartoon or something like that.
God.
That's cool.
To crawl in there and to pretend that and then to walk in super slow motion when I'd get out of that capsule.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh my gosh.
So your book is very fascinating to me as an adult, and that's what listeners need to understand, that this isn't just for the young adults or the children. This is for all people. 1,000 facts about space. You've done your homework.
Oh, yeah. This is something I've been doing for a long time. I'm the astronomer at the Cincinnati Observatory in Ohio. I've been there for more than 20 years, and my main job is education. So I do talks, about 150 talks about space every year. And from that, I've kind of put together my 1,000 greatest facts, 1,000 greatest hits from all my talks. We talk about the sun, moon, planets, stars, and pretty much anything up there.
One of the things that I've noticed is, first of all, I grew up during the Space Challenger and things like that. But when it came to that space shuttle, it was like that one thing that everybody thought, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. And now when you look back at it, you're going, no, Artemis is the greatest thing ever.
Well, it's a good debate as to what's the best mission up there. There's a lot of amazing ones, and for sheer thrill, Apollo 11 going to the moon and putting Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the surface of the moon definitely has to be up there in the top 5. For me, I think there's some other ones that we forget about that are like robotic missions. So we have the Cassini mission that was circling around Saturn for more than a decade. That got those great pictures of the rings up close and moons. We got rovers on Mars. But certainly Artemis sending people back to the moon this decade is going to be an interesting story, that's for sure.
This book comes out at a very interesting time because the big talk that I keep reading over and over again is about this green comet. What is it about this green comet? Because your eye has got to be on that sky right now.
Yeah, this green comet has a good press agent, I must say, because I hate to be the bearer of bad news. This comet is overhyped, and I've been doing this a long time, and boy, I see the things about the comet, and it might be visible to the naked eye. So I have to break it to you guys. If it acts as expected, you will probably need a telescope to be able to see it. So it's not going to grace our sky like Hale Bop and. Unless something changes, but it's looking like it's going to be a little bit of a fizzle out job. But some of our members have been taking pictures of it, and you need a 2-hour exposure just to get a good picture of it. So all those green pictures. Well, there's a little camera work going on with that, that's for sure. But we still want to get people out and look at the night sky. We got some cool stuff up there, including Venus coming around. Jupiter and Mars are up there, too. So there's some really cool stuff you can still see.
I grew up in the state of Montana, so that big sky country out there, that gave me like a backstage pass into that universe. But here in the Carolinas, I don't get that so often, which is one of the reasons why I try to do as much camping as possible.
Oh, yeah, to get out away from the city lights is huge. I mean, to see the Milky Way arching across the sky is one of those things that are just incredible. And I hope this book kind of like gets families and even adults excited about getting out there and making it accessible. I think maybe I'm a little bit strange since it's my job to be an astronomer, but when I go on vacation, I try to seek out these kind of dark skies because seeing the night sky from a dark sky, it's like a great vacation on its own.
Wow. 50 massive facts about dwarf planets. I've never heard of what a dwarf planet is. What are we talking about here?
Well, the classic dwarf planet that everybody's still mad about is Pluto. Pluto, the former planet, was converted to dwarf planet status 16 years ago. And so a dwarf planet is round, goes around the sun, but is not dominant in its region. So Pluto, the big reason why Pluto is not a planet anymore, and I know your listeners aren't going to like this, but it's because the astronomers found so many other things out there since we were kids. Pluto was just the only thing out there, and then the 90s and 2000s we found 2,000 more things out there. So Pluto, to remain a planet, that would mean that we would have to now memorize the 2,000 other planets.
What about that urban legend of that there's the black hole out there is bringing another planet in and Pluto is part of its moons?
Oh, well, that one is definitely an urban legend, yeah, because there's no black holes anywhere nearby us that could do that. Pluto's an amazing world. It has 5 moons, it has ice volcanoes, it has this cool surface. But is it in the same league as the other planets? Probably not, but it is an amazing thing, and we got these great pictures of it from close up from the New Horizons spacecraft. It took 9.5 years for that spacecraft to get to Pluto. That's how far away it is.
Are we in a space race? Because it seemed to be that was the big thing back in the 60s and 70s. We got to win the space race. But now, I mean, everybody seems to be up there, but I don't hear anybody talking about it being a race.
Yeah, there's not it's not the same kind of urgency as to getting to the moon first. There was that race, like the Soviet Union was ahead of us in sending people to space, and then maybe even exploring the moon, and then we got there first through a tremendous effort, and so I guess the next frontier is Mars. Really, Mars is what a lot of countries have their eye on, and so there is a question mark as to who might get there first with people. Would it be the United States? Would it be Russia? Would it be China? Or would it be a private company? And there's, the United States is definitely the front runner. There's nobody, close to us right now, but it certainly could change because it's going to take a while for us to get it all together to actually send people to Mars. Well,
last year was the year that we had that Orville and Wilbur Wright moment in our own generation when that helicopter was flying around Mars. I thought that was I was like a freaking child when I was learning about that.
Oh, that's great to hear, because it's we always like to hear what kind of space missions and space stories get people excited. And I think you're right, that Ingenuity helicopter,
yes, that
drone on Mars, because for me watching that, I don't know if people knew this, but we didn't know it was going to work. Like you can't test Mars conditions on Earth very perfectly, so there was a good chance that thing was not going to get off the ground. And when it did, that was just awesome. You're like, okay, engineers rock. They know what they're doing. And I'd be curious. I don't know what you think about this, but whenever they show the NASA command center, yeah, and the mission works and everybody gives their awkward high fives, I think that's like so cool. I'm like, all right, nerds celebrating. I love it. I can take it.
So many things have been invented up there in space, one of them being Velcro. It was something like the moon buggy. Did it inspire other changes down here on the Earth?
Yeah, Velcro is one of those cool things that, you got to stick stuff to places because you're floating around in space, so you have to come up with ways to get around that. I think the big legacy of the space program, and people do ask me, they say, well, what do we get out of this? We're exploring space, we get pretty pictures, that kind of stuff. But the fact that I'm talking to you right now from across the country is because of the space program. Like, our communication is completely built on what they did there. And so that's one tangible thing, that's for sure. But, for me, there is still that inspirational thing, that to inspire people, kids and adults, to explore. I think that's part of our human nature.
So I'm going to ask a kid-like question here. With modern-day technology, can the astronauts get Google up in space? Can they do Disney Plus?
That's a good question. How do they come? I don't think it's quite on, whatever the cable or what satellite do they use? I'm sure it's all connected from ground-based stuff.
Yeah.
Could they? They have the technology to do that, I'm sure. Do they watch it? That's a good question. Usually, when I talk to astronauts that have been in the space station, they always say, they don't have a lot of free time. I always think, they're just floating around up there. Might as well watch some Netflix or something like that. They're doing stuff almost all the time and have to exercise all the time. But certainly one of the pluses of a Mars mission, if you're going to go to Mars and it takes you 7 months to get there,
Jeez.
I always tell kids, like, Yeah, imagine being in a spacecraft for 7 months. Think of all the video games you could play. And you're like, oh, yeah.
The book we're talking about is 1,000 Facts About Space. What's fascinating about space right now is it doesn't look as big as we did when we saw it as children. It looks approachable now. It looks like that we can all just reach up there and become a part of it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that's one of the things that it does seem to be an intimidating subject. But that's kind of what my job is, to make it seem, or make it accessible, because I'm hoping that people will kind of be inspired by this book to get out and observe the sky themselves, and get connected with their local amateur astronomy group and science center and observatory, because they're all around the country. And places like ours here in Cincinnati, we have these giant telescopes, and people can come and look through them and see the planets and the moon and the stars. And the fact that all these things, these new discoveries, come out so fast and are on social media and on the internet, it's really amazing work. And to me, being an astronomer, being part of that exploration and sharing of knowledge, I mean, every day I get to learn something new. How cool is that?
So do you feel like a historian or somebody that's like an archaeologist? Because, I mean, you've got the 50 facts of the coolest space missions here. Not too many young children even know that there are 50 facts about these missions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, looking back at space missions, I mean, these are some of the coolest things, either manned or unmanned. They're just getting the first images of Mercury, or, for instance, were fraught with danger and pitfalls and all this kind of stuff, and then let alone sending a spacecraft out to fly by Pluto, billions of miles away. I definitely like the astronomy history angle, because of this is something that all of our ancestors have been doing, of watching the stars for thousands of years. So, and every generation we learn so much new stuff that we have to kind of revisit things and revisit our theories and change them quite often too.
I've been blessed with the opportunity to talk with many astronauts, and one of the conversations that I had during the COVID lockdown was the astronaut was heavily inspired that children were finally realizing that the computer is not a toy, it is a tool. And she felt that we will go to Mars because of that lockdown, because children are using it as a tool. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I think that being in quarantine and learning from home, again, that communication that comes from NASA technology, essentially. And one of the other things that struck me about being in quarantine and COVID was you kind of realize time differently. You think of time differently, and there was thinking like, oh, if I want to go to Mars, it's going to take me 26 months round trip. And kind of before COVID, I was thinking, wow, that's a ridiculous amount of time to be isolated. But then you're in COVID for 2 years. You're like, hey, I could have gone to Mars in this time. I would, instead of sitting around at home, I could be on a rocket to Mars. And it actually made me think I could probably do it. I always thought, no, I could never go to Mars. That'd be ridiculous. But now, if I could go through this, it sounds like I think people are reevaluating and finding their place in the universe a little bit differently since that. And so that's good to hear what the astronaut, I think, is right on.
You were talking about how you have oh wow moments as you do the research and stuff like that. One of the oh wow moments that I have inside this book is that the Greek word for milk is galaxy. And then when you sit there and you look at the photographs, you're going, I see it. I see exactly what it means.
Yeah, the ancient Greek word, they basically thought when they looked up at the sky, the Milky Way looked like spilled milk up in the sky. And that's where that comes from. It's like somebody spilled the milk. There's a whole big myth behind it, which is crazy. So I highly encourage people to get out there and learn. I don't want to say it on the air because it's pretty nuts. But yeah, look up how the Greeks thought the Milky Way came from. But that's one of the things if we're in cities, we can't see that. We can't see that many stars to kind of figure out what that looks like. And getting out in the dark sky and seeing the Milky Way is unreal.
Wow. Dean, you've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Always happy to talk with you guys. And, let me know. We can also have the big Pluto debate a little bit more, too, if we can. I'm always happy to talk Pluto with people, because my book that came out before this is called How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto, how to help your grown-up get over the trauma of losing a planet. So let's do that sometime.
I love where your heart is. Well, you be brilliant, and you have a great weekend, okay, sir?
Thanks so much. Keep looking up.